The moment I jokingly asked my best friend if she would marry me, the laughter vanished from her face so completely that I thought I had broken something inside her. Claire Whitmore stared at me across the crowded dining room while sunlight poured through the tall windows, turning the untouched glass in her hand into a trembling prism. She did not smile, tease me, or call me ridiculous as she had done 100 times before. Instead, she slowly stood, took my wrist, and led me upstairs without saying a word. I remember following her past framed family photographs and the pale blue wallpaper of her childhood home, my heart pounding harder with every step, because Claire had never looked afraid of me before. She looked afraid of what she was about to reveal. Before I tell you what she showed me behind that upstairs door, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because sometimes the person standing beside you for years is carrying a love and a wound you never learned how to see. My name is Everett Cole, and Claire had been my best friend since we were 11 years old. We met when she found me sitting behind the elementary school gym after a group of boys had thrown my backpack into a muddy drainage ditch. My mother had died the previous spring, my father had retreated into silence, and I had become the quiet kid everyone considered easy to torment. Claire marched into the mud wearing bright yellow rain boots, retrieved my bag, and told the boys that anyone who needed 3 friends to scare one grieving child was not brave enough to frighten her. From that day forward, she became the person who stood between me and every storm. She helped me study when I struggled, sat beside me during my father's hospital visits, attended my college graduation when he was too ill to travel, and held my hand at his funeral without filling the silence with empty comfort. In return, I helped her escape the shadow of a demanding family that valued appearances more than happiness. Claire's father, Russell, believed stability came from money, reputation, and marrying the right kind of person. Her mother, Margaret, was gentler but had spent most of her life smoothing over Russell's harshness. Claire wanted to become a children's book illustrator, but Russell pushed her toward finance. She obeyed for years, building a successful career that left her exhausted and quietly miserable. Through every promotion, breakup, family argument, and private disappointment, she called me first. Yet somehow, I never understood what that meant. By the time we were 32, our friendship had become the most permanent thing in either of our lives. We met for breakfast every Sunday, took long walks through the botanical gardens, and spent holidays with each other's families. People constantly assumed we were a couple, but we always laughed it away. I told myself Claire was too important to risk. I also told myself she could never feel that way about me, partly because I had grown up believing love was something I could lose the moment I trusted it. My mother's death had taught me that happiness could disappear without warning, and my father's grief had taught me that loving someone deeply could hollow out the rest of your life. So I became skilled at choosing relationships that never required my whole heart. I dated women who were kind but emotionally distant, women whose ambitions took them to other cities, women I knew I would never ask to stay. Claire watched each relationship begin and end. She never criticized my choices, though sometimes, after a breakup, she would look at me as if she wanted to ask why I kept chasing people who were already halfway gone. The afternoon everything changed began at Claire's parents' anniversary luncheon. The house was full of sunlight, flowers, polished silverware, and relatives pretending not to notice the strain between Claire and her father. Russell had recently announced that he was selling the family home and moving with Margaret to the coast. Claire had spent weeks helping them sort through decades of belongings, and I had come to support her. Halfway through lunch, her cousin announced an engagement, and the room erupted in applause. Russell used the moment to make another pointed remark about Claire still being unmarried. He said she was running out of time to build a real life, as though the one she had created did not count. Claire lowered her eyes, and I felt the familiar urge to defend her. Wanting to turn his cruelty into something harmless, I raised my glass and joked that she did not need to worry because I would marry her if no one better came along. A few relatives laughed. I expected Claire to roll her eyes. Instead, all the color drained from her face. She stood so quickly that her chair scraped the floor. Then she reached for my wrist and led me upstairs. We passed her old bedroom and stopped before a narrow door at the end of the hallway. It opened into the small attic room where she used to paint as a teenager. Dust floated through shafts of warm afternoon light. Canvases leaned against the walls, boxes were stacked beneath the slanted ceiling, and the air smelled faintly of paper and cedar. Claire walked to an old wooden cabinet and pulled out a large portfolio wrapped in faded blue cloth. She placed it on a table between us and opened it. Inside were dozens of illustrations, each carefully dated. At first, I saw scenes from our childhood: 2 children under a library table, a girl in yellow boots holding a muddy backpack, a boy sitting beside a hospital window. Then I saw later images: our college graduation, my father's funeral, Sunday breakfasts, winter walks, train rides, shared birthdays. In every picture, the same 2 figures moved through life together. Sometimes they were drawn realistically, sometimes as characters in a storybook, but the meaning was unmistakable. Claire had been illustrating our entire friendship for more than 20 years. Near the back of the portfolio, the drawings changed. There was a small white house with blue shutters. 2 bicycles leaned against the porch. A woman painted at an upstairs window while a man worked in a garden below. Another picture showed the couple older, sitting beneath a tree while children played nearby. The final illustration was unfinished. It showed a wedding beneath bright spring sunlight. The bride's face was Claire's. The groom's face was mine. My throat tightened as I realized that the pages were not simply memories. They were a life she had imagined with me. Claire finally spoke, but her voice was barely more than breath. She told me that she had loved me since we were 19. She had almost confessed after college, then again after my father died, but each time I began dating someone new or joked that friendship was safer than romance. She became afraid that honesty would cost her the person she needed most. The portfolio was where she kept every word she could not say. That I felt as though the floor had shifted beneath me. I wanted to tell her that I had been blind, that I had felt something too, but shame came first. My joke downstairs had treated her deepest hope as a punchline. Even worse, I suddenly understood how often I had used Claire's love without acknowledging it. I called her when I was lonely, relied on her when I was grieving, and assumed she would always be there while offering her only the safest part of myself. Claire did not accuse me. That made it hurt more. She simply said she could not keep pretending anymore. She had accepted an illustration position with a publishing company in Edinburgh and planned to leave in 6 weeks. The job was everything she had once dreamed of, and she had decided to go because remaining near me had become too painful. She had not intended to tell me at the luncheon, but my careless proposal had opened a wound she could no longer hide. Fear took control before honesty could. I told Claire that moving overseas was too sudden, that she was reacting emotionally, and that we should not ruin a lifelong friendship because of one difficult conversation. The moment the words left my mouth, I saw the heartbreak in her eyes. I had framed her love as a problem and her dream as an overreaction. She closed the portfolio, wrapped it carefully, and told me that the friendship had already changed because she had spent years shrinking herself to protect my comfort. Then she walked downstairs and returned to the luncheon with a composure that made me feel even smaller. I left soon afterward, carrying the knowledge that I had hurt the one person who had never abandoned me. For the next several days, Claire did not answer my calls. I visited the coffee shop where we usually met, but her chair remained empty. I walked alone through the botanical gardens and realized how much of my life had been shaped around her presence. Yet loneliness was not enough to prove love. I needed to understand whether I truly wanted a future with Claire or merely feared losing the person who made my life easier. So I began doing something I had avoided for years. I examined my own choices without excuses. I found an old box of photographs and letters from my parents. In one letter my father had written to my mother before they married, he confessed that love frightened him because it gave another person the power to devastate him. Yet he wrote that refusing love would devastate him more slowly and more completely. Reading those words, I finally understood that I had mistaken emotional distance for safety. I had never protected my heart. I had simply kept it empty enough that no one could fully live there. I also realized that Claire had been living there all along. She was in the recipes I cooked because she had taught them to me, the music I played because she had made me listen, the career I chose because she had encouraged me when I lacked confidence, and the small kindnesses I offered others because she had once shown them to me. Loving her was not a sudden discovery. It was the truth beneath years of denial. But accepting that truth did not give me the right to ask her to abandon her dream. Claire had spent too long choosing me in silence. If I loved her, I had to choose her freedom too. I wrote her a letter, not to persuade her to stay, but to apologize without defending myself. I admitted that I had taken her constancy for granted. I told her she deserved to be loved openly, not stored in the safe corner of someone else's life. I said I finally understood that my fear of loss had caused me to lose moments I could never recover. Then I placed the letter inside a simple envelope and left it with Margaret, asking only that Claire read it when she was ready. Afterward, I did something even harder. I stopped calling. I gave her the space I had denied her for years. 2 weeks later, Margaret contacted me and asked if I could help move several boxes from the attic before the house sale. When I arrived, the morning was bright and cool. Claire was there, standing beside the same wooden cabinet where she had shown me the portfolio. The silence between us felt heavy but no longer hostile. She had read my letter. She thanked me for taking responsibility, yet she said an apology could not erase years of hiding. I agreed. I told her I was not asking for instant forgiveness or a promise. I only wanted one chance to show her that I had changed, even if that change came too late for us. Then I handed her a folder containing a passport application, information about transferring my work abroad, and a list of apartments near her new office in Edinburgh. Claire stared at the papers, stunned. I explained that I was not moving to prevent her from leaving. I was willing to move because, for the first time, I had chosen a life based on love rather than fear. I had already spoken with my employer about a remote arrangement. Nothing was final, and I would not follow her unless she wanted me there. I told her that if she went alone, I would still be proud of her. If she wanted friendship from a distance, I would honor it. If she wanted nothing from me, I would accept the consequence. But if even a small part of her still believed in the life she had drawn, I wanted the opportunity to build it slowly, honestly, and without jokes. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she did not rush into my arms. She asked why she should trust that I would not panic again when the relationship became difficult. It was a fair question. I told her she should not trust promises made in one emotional afternoon. She should watch what I did next. So that was what happened. Over the following weeks, we began again, not as a couple pretending everything was healed, but as two people practicing honesty. I attended counseling to confront the grief and abandonment fears I had buried since childhood. Claire spoke openly when she felt hurt instead of protecting me from discomfort. We took long daytime walks, discussed practical fears, and allowed silence without treating it as rejection. Some conversations ended with tears. Others ended with cautious laughter. Forgiveness did not arrive as one dramatic moment. It returned in small pieces. 3 days before Claire's flight, we visited the botanical gardens where we had spent so many Sundays. The afternoon sun shone through the leaves, and families wandered along the paths. Claire carried the unfinished wedding illustration from the portfolio. She placed it on a bench between us and said she had considered throwing it away. Instead, she had decided to change it. She showed me the new version. The wedding was gone. In its place were two people standing at the entrance of an unfamiliar road, each carrying a suitcase. They were not holding hands yet, but they were walking in the same direction. Claire said she could not promise marriage, not then. She could promise a beginning, provided I understood that love was not rescuing her from her future but walking beside her while she built it. I cried before I could answer. Then I told her that a beginning was more than I deserved and exactly what I wanted. I did not ask her to marry me again. I asked whether I could take her to the airport, visit once she was settled, and keep proving that I was serious. Claire smiled, the first unguarded smile she had given me since the luncheon, and slipped her hand into mine. 6 months later, I moved to Edinburgh. Claire's new career flourished, and her illustrations began appearing in children's books across Europe and North America. I continued my work remotely from a small apartment 2 streets away from hers. We did not rush into living together. We learned each other beyond friendship, the habits that annoyed us, the fears we had hidden, the ways romance required different forms of patience. There were disagreements, moments of insecurity, and days when Claire wondered whether I loved her or merely loved being forgiven. I answered those doubts not with speeches but with consistency. I showed up. I listened. I apologized when necessary. I encouraged her ambitions even when they took her away for weeks. She, in turn, stopped assuming she had to earn love through endless sacrifice. 2 years after the day in the attic, we returned to Claire's family home before the new owners moved in. The sale had been delayed by renovations, and Margaret had arranged one final visit. Bright spring sunshine filled the empty rooms. Upstairs, the attic smelled of fresh wood and paint. I brought Claire to the same table where she had opened the portfolio. This time, I did not make a joke. I placed the restored portfolio before her, now professionally bound, with every drawing preserved. At the back, I had added one blank page. On it, I had written that our future should never again be imagined by one person in silence. Then I knelt and asked Claire to create the next page with me. She cried, laughed, and made me stand before answering. Then she said yes. We married the following spring in a small garden ceremony held entirely beneath the afternoon sun. Claire designed the invitations, and the final illustration showed 2 people at the end of a long road, not because their journey was finished, but because they had finally learned to walk it together. Russell attended quietly. In the months before the wedding, he apologized to Claire for measuring her life by his expectations and admitted that his pressure had made her afraid to choose happiness. Their relationship did not heal instantly, but it became more honest. Margaret cried through the ceremony, and when Claire reached me beneath the flowering trees, I understood something I wish I had known years earlier: real love is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that someone is worth facing fear for. Before this story ends, leave a meaningful comment about the person who stood beside you when you were struggling, or tell us whether you believe lifelong friendship can grow into lasting love. Your words may remind someone in our community that loyalty, honesty, and forgiveness still matter. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Everett and Claire did not find happiness because their love was perfect. They found it because one of them finally stopped hiding, the other finally stopped running, and both were brave enough to begin again. Sometimes the greatest love story is not about meeting the right person. Sometimes it is about finally seeing the person who has been there all along and becoming courageous enough to love them the way they have always deserved.